Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are diving back into our The Arranged series by Stella Gray, and we're on book 3. If you have not already listened to the first 2 books in this series, which are The Deal and The Secret, those links are going to be available down below in the description section. Once you finish those, come and join us as we dive into the 3rd book, which is the end of Tori and Stefan's story, The Choice. We start off where we ended in book 2, which was when we find out that apparently Stefan has a son with Anja, and they have reappeared, and apparently it's because the father's brought her back. So our boy Stefan is completely in a state of shock. He's looking around, and he finally drops in a chair. So the father says, you and Anja and the boy can finally be a family, and like all this type of crap, which is crazy because this is the person that you apparently took away from him because she wasn't any good. So now you're saying she can be a family. So that kind of lets me know you realize the threat of Tori, because otherwise, why would you bring this woman back? So Tori was incredibly strong, and she was really level-headed. She did not spaz out. I am super proud of her for that. She said first to Constantine, why don't we give them some time alone? And Constantine was like, sure, I'm sure they have a lot to catch up on. And then Stefan was like, no, like he wanted Tori to stay there. So then she was like, excuse us for a moment. And she took Stefan out in the hallway. And she kind of let him know, you two have history. It has nothing to do with me. There's now a child involved. You all have got to talk. She's like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be to myself for a moment. And, because this is all a shock for me too. But you need to stay here and have the conversation. So he, of course, kept fighting her at first. But then he was like, okay, he gave in and was like, okay, I'll stay and I'll talk. In Stefan's mind, he's like, Anja is like a fond memory, right? Because he fell in love with her when he was like 17. But Tori is like, that's the future, That's what I'm going to fight for. Like, I'm not losing her. So seeing her didn't bring back all these crazy emotions that made him want to just run and be with Anja, So Stefan goes back in the library, and Anja and the boy, they're gone. His name's Max. It's just his father there. And so the father's like, basically, he's lying. He's like, he never admits to making a mistake, right? But he made the comment, I might have overreacted when I took Anya away from you, right? And that's so out of his character because he says, I don't make mistakes. He always says he just makes choices. So Stefan knows, like, there is got to be, a screwed up reason why he brought them here. It can't be for anything good because the father doesn't do good stuff. So, of course, Stefan doesn't trust him. But at the same time, he needs to lure him into a false sense that he's falling for the BS so that he can get as much information as he can. So he takes a drink, Stefan does. He sits down in the chair. The father leaves. Anja finally comes down. She took the kid upstairs to go to sleep. And they have their conversation. And so basically what we find out is that girl been in the U.S. this whole time. The father helped her get a new identification and has been sending her money monthly. So she says that the reason she left is because he was going to school and she figured that it was going to be basically a miserable life because he was going to try and work and support her and the kid, and then eventually they were going to wind up hating each other. And so he was like, he understood it to a point, but then it was like, okay, but then once I was done with school, I was in my profession, why didn't you say anything then? And so she says that when she found out that he was working for Constantine, she couldn't believe it And she was like, knowing what you know about everything that they do, she just pretty much was like, she didn't understand how he could work for someone like that. And then he was like, well, wait a minute, but you've been taking money from this very thing all this time. So how you gonna like judge me? Like, don't get on this like moral high horse because I work for this company, but yet you were taking money from it. See, sometimes people do that whole thing with, well, I never do this and this is wrong and all this type of stuff. But if you're willing to take money from it, I'm sorry. I understand you have a child, but you still thought that getting those funds, wherever they were coming from, it was more important for you to take care of your child. So why are you judging him? And you're assuming that he's doing the same thing that the father's doing, So I don't know. I ain't really like her being all like kind of judgy with him when you've been taking money this whole time, And it's kind of like, I don't know. Let's say at first she was taking the money, like to do something with it so that she wouldn't have to fully depend on those funds each month. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like it. It was just very judgy. And I didn't like that from her. I really didn't. So he's still pissed. And he was just basically like, he didn't think he could ever really forgive her for doing that. Because she took time away from him with his kid, So right when he was about to leave, she told him that pretty much, for what it's worth, I still love you and I never stopped. So Tori heads back to the condo. She hasn't allowed herself to cry just yet. She thought about calling her stepmother Grace, but she just could not find a way to do it. And she really didn't know what all she would say. So then she kind of had a memory of her and Michelle of when she first met her. And how at first she kind of looked at, how she pretty much thought of Michelle as a friend from the beginning. Because Michelle she just kind of came in. She had that friend vibe. And they've just really always been that way. She is motherly to her, but they do have like a close friendship as well. So she finally gets home and she goes and takes a shower and she finally lets out cries, and they get louder and louder because now she's thinking about the fact that, when she looked at Anja, that was the woman that he loved so much, and that just made her just pretty much distraught. Because then she started thinking about them in sexual positions, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like, if I lose him and he goes back to her, it just felt so horrible to her. So she goes to the guest bedroom instead of their master bedroom because she feels like she doesn't know what the conversation is going to be. She basically is like, the kiss he put on her forehead could have been a goodbye kiss. And she knows he needs time to make a decision. And so she just goes to the guest bedroom and she just cries even more. So then in the middle of the night, Stefan comes home and they, of course, have this amazing fuck session. At first, she was almost tempted to not do it because she was scared of, is this going to be our last fuck? She was just completely all in her head. And then she was like, fuck it, I need this. So she went ahead and did it, and they had an incredible fuck session. So the whole time he kept telling her how much he loved her. He kept telling how much she was his. And he had her coming a few times. He wants her, but she still fears that when the morning comes, he's going to decide something different. Because she did smell the liquor on his breath. And so she was like, she didn't know if this was like just a drunk thing and, what's going to happen in the morning. I'm like, oh, poor girl. So the next morning, Tori wakes up. She has to go to school and she's like trying to get herself together. And of course, she has all these thoughts again in her head and she still thinks he's probably going to leave her. And she's not ready to hear that news. So girl is trying to sneak out of the apartment and get to school without him waking up. Well, of course, she's interrupted by Stefan, and he's like, where are you going so quickly? And she was like, well, I got to go to school. And he was like, don't you think we need to talk? And she was like, we'll talk later. She's like, I'm going to be late. She was trying to get out of there because she was terrified. Like, and I can understand that. If you think someone's going to end it with you and you absolutely adore this person, that's a hard conversation. And, that's difficult. So I felt so bad for her, I get it, but at the same time, she was completely in her head because nothing he's done has said that he wants to be with Anja and not be with her. Nothing he said or done has given that type of vibe or anything. But in her head, she's worked out this whole scenario and she's holding on to it. So he had wanted to talk about, while she was in the guest room. And because he asked her that, he was like, well, why were you in the guest room? And she's like, I got to go. We'll talk about it later when I get home tonight. And I might be late. And she left. So after Tori left, Stefan, of course, was just as confused. So now he's having all these thoughts in his head. And he's wondering, like, did I make the wrong decision by staying and talking to Anja? Should I have fought more to keep Tori there? Or should I just have come home with her? So he kept having these thoughts. And then he was like, you know what? I want to go, let me try and get to know this kid. So he called his dad, told him, I'm not coming in. I'm going to take some time to get to know the child. Dad was like, of course, take all the time you need. Family comes first. So then he got Anja's number from the father, and then he called her and told her, he wanted to meet up, spend some time. She got happy and was like, oh, with Max too? And he was like, yeah. But then he let her know, just so you're aware, if Max was 18, I wouldn't be talking to you at all. And that kind of killed the joy out of her voice. So they're going to meet up at the zoo because apparently the kid loves animals. I think dinosaurs in particular. So then he texted Tori and was like, hey, listen, I'm going to the zoo with Anja and Max. I hope it's not a problem. Text me back. Let me know how you feel. But she never texts back. Side note, he also asked Anja, like, what do I call you? Because she's now going by, I think her new identity was like Annette. And she was like, you can call me Anja because it's nice to hear my, real name again. They meet up at the zoo. They have a great time. He's automatically taken with Max and Max with him. Max just knows him as Mommy's friend, and they're going to leave it at that for now. And the whole time, of course, his mind is kind of going back and forth with everything with Tori. He's kind of softened a little bit with Anja, but at the same time, he's still pissed because he feels like she still could have reached out sooner. Someone takes a picture of him. He feels a little eerie about it. Even though it's the zoo, people take pictures, but paparazzi does as well. So he feels a little oomph about it. He still hasn't gotten a picture. He still hasn't gotten a text from Tori at all. And he's been checking the phone. Anja has been really quiet, kind of not interfering with the time that he's having with Max. And he just kind of figures, she's just giving them a time to bond. So Tori's at school and we find out she left her phone at home by mistake. And so she, of course, has not seen the text message from Stefan. However, when she was leaving out of her class, she saw a bunch of people gathered. So she thought it was something going on with the program. And it was a gossip site, had a photo of Anja, Stefan, and Max. And so, of course, they looked like this happy family. And, of course, in her brain, it's like it's cemented. It was like, that's what I thought. And now I'm seeing it. And this looks like the family he should have. And so her girlfriends were kind of like, do you know who this is? And she was like, oh, it's an old friend, but, in town. He's just, sightseeing with them. They didn't really buy it, but they didn't bother her anymore about it either. So then Gavin came up. She told Gavin everything that happened. And Gavin let her know, listen, if anything, like if this is true, I hope it's not. I kind of hope it is true because I do want my shot with you. So he really did fall for her like I thought he did. But at the same time, he was just kind of like, that dude is crazy about you. I can't see him doing this to you. This doesn't really line up with how that man feels about you. So he just told her, you two just need to talk. So then they hugged, and she thought after, because she knows that Constantine is probably still having someone watch her. And she's like, I'm sure they'll get a picture, but who cares? Because, hell, I had just had to see that picture and the pain I feel. He needs to feel it, too. I'm like, damn. So Tori comes home. Stefan's there, and he's, like, on cloud nine. And she's looking at him like, wow. He had this perfect day with his new family. He's beyond happy. And so he told her, he had a great day. And she was just like, you're really going to be happy like that, when you didn't tell me anything about it. So he was like, I sent you a text. And he showed her where he had sent the text. And then she felt stupid. But it still didn't waver the fact that what she saw in that photo, that perfect family, and how she didn't fit into that picture. And so then Stefan was like, we're going to have dinner at Constantine's. And I guess Max is going to be there. Anja doesn't want Tori to be there because she feels like it's too many people being thrown on him. Which I understand, but I think it's, let's also be honest, this woman still wants this man. She done told him, I still love you. So, of course, she's not trying to have the wife there. She's trying to show him this is what your family could look like, So, it's not just about that kid. Let's be real. So then Tori, again, because she has that image stuck in her head, feels like there's no place for her. And so even though Stefan was like, no, you're going to be there, we're a package deal, in her mind, it's already been made up. And she feels like she needs to walk away and just kind of make it easier for everybody. And it's sad because this happens when you've made up in your head, like, okay, this is what it is, and it's never going to change, And so even though nothing around you, like now she does have a photo, right? She does have a picture she saw of a perfect looking family, right? But really he hasn't done anything to make you feel like he doesn't want you there. He's saying we're a package deal. We're together. Like this is not changing, but but she already had it in her head, and seeing that picture, poor girl, she done for. Stefan arrives at dinner. Tori was supposed to already be there, but she's not there. The father was kind of pissy about him being late, made the comment about Tori not being here, and the whole thing about her not bothering to show up. Stefan kept calling her, texting her, no answer. Phone's going straight to voicemail. So they go ahead and start dinner, but he still is worried about Tori. So Constantine is just talking like Anja and Stefan are going to be together. Like, they're just going to be this big happy family. So finally, the dinner was over. He called Bruce. Bruce tells him, she went inside. I saw her go inside. And then he says, he went down the street to go get coffee. So he goes back in the house, the condo, because it's a condo. And he says to his dad, what did you do to her? And he says, I didn't do anything. Maybe she just realized she doesn't belong here. There's no room for her. So he goes back to his apartment. It's cold. Checks the guest room. Nothing's there. Checks the master bedroom. All of her stuff is gone. And he was like, what the fuck? My father was right. She left me. So, of course, he goes on this whole thing of trying to find her. She's nowhere to be found. He thought about calling her father, but then he was like, after what happened the last time she saw him, I don't think she would go there. So he figured he'd wait outside of her class to talk to her. And if she didn't want to talk, he would respect it at that point, but he had to at least try. So a girl walked out of the class that was one of her friends. I think her name was Audrey. And we find out that when she told him the whole story about when she saw the article of the photo of him and the other woman and the child, that when it came out on the blog site, she had talked with Gavin and she saw them on the bench and they were hugging and he was consoling her. So, of course, he's pissed off. So now he's like, oh, so that's what it is. So basically she left me to go be with Gavin. It's my fault because I trusted her and him. And now she's going to go be with him. And he was like, at this point, fuck love. This is what it gets you, hurt. So fuck Tori. He was done. So we find out that Tori did go back to her father's house because she was like, where else could I go? But I'm like, you could have went to Grace's apartment. Grace would have let her stay there. But I guess she wanted to get away from Chicago, so she went back to Springfield. So her father's not there. He's in D.C. Michelle's the only one there, and she hasn't gone into full detail with Michelle what happened because she's not ready to talk about it. She's thinking she'll take the rest of the year off and then she'll like reapply and get some type of financial assistance because she figures by then she'll be divorced. Keep in mind, this man has not said he wants to divorce her. He hasn't told her he's going to leave her. He hasn't told her he wants someone else. He hasn't said he still loves this other woman. Nothing. All of this is literally in her head. And she's convinced herself that this is the decision that needs to be made. I'm the outsider and I'm trying to make it easier. And don't get it twisted. I do understand the whole thing of, not trying to make something complicated. But at least wait for them to tell you they don't want you. Is what I'm saying. Before you have a whole... Like, again, I'm an overthinker, so I get it to an extent. But it's like, at least wait to hear it, And then you got a reason to spiral a little bit. But when you haven't been given any reason, and this is all built up, that's a problem. Okay, so she's seen where Stefan has been calling and calling her to no avail. She told the staff, not to answer the house phone. And so of course they're not going to do it. She left her cell phone also at the condo in the drawer. So she's not going to get any phone calls from there. So MZ, her sister-in-law, called the house and she picked up. And so MZ was like, oh my gosh, you're safe. Where the hell? What is going on? Why did you leave? So she tells her what happened, but she again leaves out the whole trafficking thing about the company. Because she knows she doesn't know about it and she's not trying to add that onto her list. And so MZ is like, are you fucking serious? He is going crazy trying to find you. And she was like, he doesn't want me. And she's like, where do you get that from? He hasn't said that. And so she's like, because that's eventually what's going to happen. I'm just trying to save everybody pain. But she's like, but you're not. You're deciding for him. And she's like, that's wrong. You need to let him know what your choice is and why you're making that choice. He deserves that. And so she gave her until the weekend to tell him. And she said, if you don't, then I'm going to tell him where you are and why you left. So I guess Tori kind of hung up and she's like, well, now I got to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. Like, how am I going to tell him all of this? So Stefan, of course, is having a hard time. Poor boy, can barely concentrate. He really hasn't worked that much. He's been pretty useless at the job. And his father, of course, is furious at him. He does want to talk to Tori at least one more time because he does love the girl. But he decides, you know what? Let me go spend some time with the kid. So he goes to the father's place. They're not there. They apparently have gone downtown. Constantine has given Anja the Amex so they can make the kids' room feel more comfy. So this is, of course, is upsetting to Stefan, and he's trying to figure out what the father's angle, like what is his angle, because his father only does things that benefit him. So he's trying to figure it out, and his father, of course, is telling him, you need to get over it. He was like, your wife left you. You need to get over that bitch. And that, made Stefan like lunge at his father, but he didn't do anything. But he felt the same way he did when he was 17 years old, helpless, and was like, fuck this. We can't do this anymore. He's got to find a way to get rid of his father for good. So he's decided that this investigation with his dad is taking too long. It needs to move forward. And so he goes down to Union Station and reaches out to Frank Chase, his DOD connection. And he's like, what do you need to get this man gone? And so Frank was like, we're pretty much close. It's just taking a little bit more time. But, we've got a lot of stuff on him. So then he thought about asking about Tori, but he didn't. He just hung up. So then he goes to his condo, and when he gets in the lobby, he sees Gavin, and he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? But Gavin looks horrible. Looks like he hasn't been sleeping. He looks how Stefan looks, which is why I said before, I think he fell for that girl, and he didn't mean to. So then they have their back and forth, and he finds out Gavin hasn't seen her since Monday either. So she didn't leave him to go be with Gavin. And so then he calls the father, who is now in DC, but the father was just like, what are you talking about? Like, she can't be at the house. And he's like, you need to learn how to keep her on a leash. And Stefan realizes how stupid he's been the whole time. He's like, she's at that damn house. They're not answering the phone on purpose. And he knows they have staff. It's a senator's house. They have staff. And he's like, no problem. I'm just going to have to go down there. I'm just going to have to go get her. So Gavin was just like, could you just let her know, have her text me, let me know she's okay. And he was like, sure, no problem. So he's leaving, getting in his car. He's about to head out. MZ calls him, and he's like, this really isn't a good time, but what's up? And she says, well, it's about Tori. And he's like, I know where she is. And he's like, I'm going to get her. So then she's like, well, let me tell you why she left. Because it wasn't because she didn't love you. She goes into the whole explanation of why she did what she did. And he was like, okay, no problem. I'm going to get my wife back. So Tori was having a phone conversation with Grace. And Grace pretty much was letting her know, you need to be kind to yourself. Give yourself time to figure out what you're going to do. You don't have to have everything figured out in 3 days. So then she went for a run, or jog walk, shall we say. She takes a shower. She's crying her eyes out in the shower. She hears this loud commotion. And then all of a sudden, boom, Stefan comes in the bathroom looking like a madman. And he basically was like, he told her how much he loved her. And that she was his choice. And he was like, I want to be with you. I love you. And she kept saying that she was like, I know that you love her. That was your first love. And, you were still looking for her up until and even after we got married. Like, clearly you have some type of feeling for that woman. And he just let her know, I don't feel that way for her like that, But you haven't given yourself the opportunity, is what she tells him. And he's like, I don't need the opportunity. He's like, you're my family. This isn't a choice. The choice has already been made. And he just kept telling her how much he loved her. And he let her know, I'm honoring my vows. Are you going to do the same thing? And she, of course, is like, yes. And he was like, don't you ever do that to me again. And he made her promise not to leave him again. So then, of course, they had to have like this amazing fuck session. It was absolutely glorious. She sucked him off. They fucked hard a couple times. There was ass fucking. It was all kind of stuff. Very intense. And, of course, the whole time, she's like, I'll never leave you again. And vice versa. So they stayed in Springfield for like another day or so. And then they headed back to Chicago. And he, of course, had all her stuff set to be shipped back to their condo in Chicago. So when they get back to Chicago, he said, we're going to have a dinner party tonight. We're going to show them that it's you and me. So this is a united front. So they paid Greta extra and also for her to get help so they could make this happen. So everybody comes. MZ comes first, then Luca. He's already drunk. And Constantine and Anja come and they all sit around the table. So everyone's, chit chat a little bit, but the father's trying to dominate the conversation as normal. And he starts talking to Anja about the benefits of sending your kid off to boarding school. So then Stefan makes a toast and basically says that, he's happy everyone's here. He's going to accept and welcome everyone and hope that everyone does that with Max and Anja and to the family. But make no mistake, if anyone tries to come between me and my wife, I will cut you off forever. And so Tori got so choked up, she left because she didn't expect him to make such a forceful statement. So she got overcome with emotion. So she ran out, which I thought was stupid. Bitch, I'll just sit here and have a couple tears in my eyes because my man just said something beautiful. I'm not finna run off. That looks crazy. That just didn't make sense to me at all. So he comes in after her and he was like, did I do something wrong? And she's like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. It was perfect. it's just how much you love me. It just became overwhelming. And I just needed a moment to get myself together. So she straightened herself up and they headed back out to dinner. So the rest of the dinner was pretty short because Constantine was pissed because he realized the gig wasn't going to work. Anja looked completely miserable. MZ was happy. Luca was drunk. So Constantine and Anja left, and then Luca was going back to get more drink, and Stefan tried to stop him, was like, dude, I think you've had enough. And the dude was like, you're not my father, but I guess you might be someone's father. But then again, he doesn't look anything like you. And you do know what she used to do for a living, right? So Stefan was pissed, jacked him up, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. So then Tori came in, gave Lucas some coffee. He didn't put up much of a fight. He went in the other room with MZ. And then MZ took him home. And then it was just Tori and Stefan. And Stefan told her, I think I'm going to ask for a DNA test. And Tori was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea because you need to be absolutely sure and know the truth. So they go and take the test. They're waiting to get the results back. They're in a waiting room. It's Anja, Tori, and Stefan. They didn't tell the father about it because they didn't need any extra mess. Tori and Anja, they've kind of bonded because they like different types of movies and foreign foods. So they get the results, and the woman tells them that the child has a 0% chance of being Stefan's. He felt relieved and a little sadness. He was scared about, the venture, but he was also relieved that it was a hurdle he didn't have to cross. And now him and Tori, didn't have to try and figure out how to navigate that. But I don't think it would have been that bad of a situation to navigate if Anja understands, I'm married, this is what's happening. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it would have been that bad, especially since Tori and Anja have kind of bonded. I don't see that being too much of a problem. Anja's crying, and Tori's consoling her. But Stefan was like, well, do you know who the father could possibly be? And so Tori kind of gives him a look of like, why are you asking her that right now? But Stefan was like, the child need to know. So, and so she says that she had also made a comment. She was like, I thought it was yours. And then she said, maybe I knew there was a possibility that it wasn't yours, and that's why I stayed away so long. Kind of like, as long as I stay away, it's yours, right? But if I come back and find out the truth and it's not yours, it's going to be more heartbreaking. But that's fucking selfish. You know what I'm saying? So she says the only person she dealt with was a guy that he never used his real name. He didn't like to use condoms. And she knew who he was, though, because he's on TV. It's Senator Lindsay. And I freaking figured, I was like, you know what? If it's not Stefan's, it's either that father's or it's Senator Lindsay. That's what I was thinking in my head. And sure enough, it's freaking Senator Lindsay. So it's been a few days. Tori, of course, she wants to meet Mac. She's not trying to push anything, but she does feel like, he's my half brother. I do want to meet him. I do want to get to know him. She calls Anja, says, hey, would you like to do a play date? They got like this play area in her condo. And she was like, sure. So before she went home, she stopped off at the toy store and went crazy, bought a lot of stuff. And so when she got to the condo, with a play area in the condo, she's like, I'm sorry, I know I went a little crazy. She's like, but she's missed so many birthdays and holidays. She went a little crazy in the toy store. So they have a great time. Afterwards, they go upstairs. They have pizza for dinner. Stefan and Tori have a conversation, and basically she lets her know that, and Anja's there as well. I'm sorry. And she lets her know, I want to be in Max's life. And she's like, I'm his half sister. I feel, I should be. She's like, now, if you want to wait until you tell him who I am, that's fine. But I do want to be in his life. And so Tori understood that with the father, it was going to be a little different, because first of all, this is an election year too. So a scandal like this could like completely ruin his political career. But my thing is, don't be doing fuck shit. If you don't do stupid shit, guess what? You don't have to worry about that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't care about your political career because clearly you didn't fucking care about it. Like, why are you raw dogging bitches you know are prostitutes? Like, I'm sure they probably haven't tested. It's more of a high-end, probably escort type of a service. But still, bitch, you got a fucking wife at home. Why are you raw? I mean, you shouldn't be cheating in the first place, but I'm just saying, why are you raw dogging this woman? Like, that's your stupid fault. So, I don't really care about his legacy because to me, you didn't care enough about it. But that was my little rant. So, I'm just a little terrified to tell him, you know. But, you know, Tori let her know, I'll be there with you. We'll both be there with you. You know, don't worry about it. We'll be there. That's what family's for. So Tori goes into the living room with the kid and they're talking and everything. And then Anja and Stefan have a conversation. And she just basically lets him know that his father, Constantine, had lied to her and basically brought her there telling her that the relationship between Stefan and Tori was on the rocks. And that it would just take one thing and they would break up. And so, you know, in her brain, here's the man she's always loved. They have this child together, she thinks. And so she feels like it's finally her way of having that family she always wanted for him. And she was kind of ashamed to admit that was why she came. And so, but of course, you know, it makes Stefan furious that his father was going through all these, you know, doing all these ploys to try and break them apart. And so he still let her know, you know, listen, if you ever need anything, I'll be here for you, you know. And she let him know, you know, he was a really good man and that even though she came to this country when she was 16 and she knew what she was going to wind up having to do, she was okay with that because she was getting modeling gigs as well. But what started happening was she was starting to be on her back more than she was on the runway. And that's when she felt beyond trapped and hated it. And when she found out she was pregnant, she figured, you know, this was her way to take that offer to finally get from out of doing the prostitution. So then she did let him know, you know, if he ever needs any help trying to take his father down, she'd love to help. He's like, you know, she told him, you know, I have no problem helping you. I have no problem keeping secrets. You know, she could always tell when he was up to something. So she knows he's probably planning something, but he just says, no, thank you. He doesn't tell her anything about what he has going on with his father, but he does want to confront his father about this new information that he just received. So then Tori calls her father and finds out when he's going to be coming back to Springfield, but he's going to be going to Chicago for a few days. She's like, great. So that makes it even easier. So she sets up a time to talk to him. She doesn't say what it's about. He agrees to see her one of the days after one of his long day of meetings. So her, Stefan, and Anja pop up to his place. He, of course, recognizes Anja, but tries to act like he don't know who the hell she is. So then he's like, what are you doing here? Why did you bring someone here? Like, what are you all trying to pull? So Tori's like, cut the crap. You know who this is. So Anja cuts in and she says, we're here because I have a 7-year-old son. And, of course, he's like, that's a lie. It's not mine. You're a whore. He's like, you're an opportunist. All this type of stuff. So then Tori shows a picture of the kid. The boy looks like a boy version of her when she was younger. And, of course, he's looking at it. And he's like, why would you do this to me? Why are you trying to destroy me? And she was like, I'm not trying to destroy you, but you need to tell the truth. And he was like, you're trying to ruin me. He's like, I'm going to put you all in jail. He's like, I know people in the Department of Justice. I mean, he was just going on and on. So then he starts grasping for air, sweating profusely. Then he grabs his heart. He's having a heart attack. So the senator doesn't make it. They got him to the hospital, but during surgery, he had another cardiac arrest, and he's gone. So, of course, she's distraught. Michelle is on her way from Springfield to Chicago. So now she's got to break the news to Michelle. So when Michelle finally gets there, Stefan brings her back. They tell her what happened, and she told her everything. And Michelle handled it pretty good. So when Tori showed her the picture, she was like, oh my God, the child, he looks just like you when you were younger. He looks like Mitch. She was disappointed that Mitch had denied the child and that was like his final act. But she let her know she wants to be in the child's life. She'll help take care of him financially, anything they need, she's willing to help. And she also talked about how she had wanted more children, but they had tried the first few years, but she just never got pregnant. So Stefan and Tori take Michelle back to their apartment, their condo. They set her up in the guest bedroom. And finally, once she's in the room, Tori, she allows herself to cry. And because it's like she hadn't cried. When they told her he was dead, she hadn't cried yet. But then she kind of allowed herself to feel it. And of course, Stefan was there to comfort her. So they go back to Springfield. Michelle takes care of pretty much all the funeral arrangements. She's absolutely a rock. She helps Tori kind of cope and just kind of helping Tori be stronger with dealing with the press and different things. So they get through the funeral. They head back to Chicago. Stefan and Tori are back in the condo. And she tells him, I need you to fuck me. He's like, you're tired. Because she hadn't been sleeping well that past week when they were back in Springfield, and she's like, I'm telling you what I need. And so he gave it to her. So the next day, Stefan goes to confront his father about all his different manipulations, and the father was just kind of like, whatever, like he didn't care. He was like, yeah, I know what I was doing, I'll do it again. And he tells him, I've got bigger plans, and you need to divorce her so we can get another political ally, because now she's useless. So he asked him, like, what are you trying to do? Like, what's the next step? He wouldn't tell him. He's like, you're not ready for that information yet. So he left the office. So then he calls Bruce, the guy that watches Tori, and told him, keep an eye on my dad. Let me know if he goes anywhere besides home. So Stefan stayed late that night. And he goes in, and he was able to figure out his father's password pretty easy. It was some form of their mother's name. And the plan is he's basically finna move from prostitution into selling people. So he's going into slavery. So basically he's promising these people they can come over here, get this new life, help them get their visas, and basically make them work for nothing. I'm like, geez, he's cruel. There's no feeling in that man. So he even gets information on there's flights. So there's scheduled flights of merchandise coming in, which is what he calls the people. That's some shit. So he prints out as much as he can, and he's going to turn it over to the feds so they can get ahead of this and get his ass in jail. So when Stefan gets home, he shows all the information to Tori. Tori, of course, was like, we need to get him taken down. So she takes the information the next morning to Gavin. He forwards it to Frank. And now we just kind of got to wait for them to come in. So the next day, 10 a.m., boom, scattered, people everywhere screaming. The people that knew about the shady side of the business, they were looking super scared. But the other people just was freaking out because they didn't know what was going on. Because you got to remember, there's still a portion of the business that operates as normal, that has nothing to do with that, dark underbelly of it. His father had ducked off into some other room. He wasn't in his office. So he pulled Stefan in there. Him and Luca were already in the office. And come to find out, there's a back door that they can get out and get into the parking garage. He's already got a car waiting for them. So he was ready to go. Luca was kind of confused, didn't know what to do. And the dad saying all this horrible things to him, telling him, you're so stupid. You can't make this simple decision. And he's like, what is it going to be? So Stefan has to pretend like he's going along with him, So he tells Luca, go ahead, I'll be right behind you. So he fires off a text real quick to Tori, and she's like, she hopes he can get it to the feds quick, because I guess he doesn't text the feds directly. So he texts Tori. They get down to the bottom because they're going down these stairs and they can't see. It's pitch black. And so they weren't trying to tumble into darkness. So they get to the garage. It opens up and the feds were there. So Tori did get the message to him. So all three of them get arrested because that was part of the deal. He had to get arrested as well. So it didn't show he was the one that did it. But he wanted his father to know that he was the one that did it. So he called out to his dad, hey, this was me. So he did have to spend some time in prison. I don't remember them saying how long he was there. Um, he gets out. Luca is the one that comes to get him. He's looking a lot better. He started this 12-step program, so he's getting himself together, and now he wants to get involved in the business, the real business, because the bullshit is gone. They've released a statement saying that all that's over with. We're moving forward. They're even going to change the name to Danica Rose, which was their mother's name, which I thought was super sweet. So a couple days later, they go to Springfield to do the reading of the will. And I think he left Michelle 7 figures, and everything else went to Tori. So it was a ton of money, but we never know the full amount. She thought he had removed her from the will because of what had happened, because he's known to say, I have my lawyer on speed dial, but he hadn't done it. And so Michelle told her, I know you all had hit a rough patch, but your father really did love you. So he has like real estate in Florida. There's a condo in Chicago as well. So Tori's like, I got an idea. So they go see Anja and Max, and she lets her know she wants to give them the condo. Anja, of course, was like, that's too much. But she was like, no, I want you guys to stay, your family. And she's also going to split her inheritance with Max as well. She's like, it's not just pity, it's because it's the right thing to do. So they told Max that Tori was his sister and that the father had passed away, and he was sad about that because he was never going to get to meet him. But he was happy that Tori was his sister. And you know what? Honestly, maybe the father would have come around, or maybe he would have been a complete dick and traumatized the kid. So maybe this was for the best. Just saying. Luca's doing amazing. He stepped up so much. He's helping with the models. If the ones that decided to stay, he's getting them trauma therapy. Like, he is on it. He's also been spending a lot of time with Anja and Max. So apparently he goes over, plays video games with Max, and if they need anything fixed, he fixes it for them. So I'm sure that's probably going to blossom into something. The father, of course, has been trying to get bail, but he keeps getting denied. Stefan and Tori are on their way for a vacation to the Cayman Islands. They get there. She wants to hunch, but he was like, let's go watch the sunset. She finally agrees to go. They get there. Grace, Michelle, Anja, Max, Luca, they're all there. And he wanted to give her a real wedding. They didn't choose it the first time around, but this time they were choosing each other. And so they wanted those that loved and supported them to be there. And so now they have their little ceremony. Inside one of the rings, he inscribes, I'll always choose you. So that is how it ends. It was so sweet. I really like this series. I want to know what you guys think, so please drop down in the comment section and let me know what you guys think of this series. It could be book 1, 2, or 3. Now, there are other books in this series that dive into the stories of Luca, MZ as well. I'm not gonna review those, but feel free to jump into it. It's the Arranged series, so I think it was probably like 9 books total in it. So definitely something if you want to find out what happens with Luca, if you find out what happens with MZ. Dive into those books. If you are in the market looking for a beautiful journal or notebook, I do have those on sale, and I will have that link listed down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.